Hey everyone, GameWiz1 here. I wanted to talk to you today about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and for whatever reason it may be, a subject that I never really thought would actually matter. The subject is politics. As you may or may not know, right now in America, we are in a historic situation where we have a government that is absolutely gone silent. As you may already know, everyone has decided to hit the crazy button, and we have absolutely zero progress toward any reasonable goals. You may want to know what is my stance on the situation. Well, that's a little simpler than, most people may have. For me, personally, I'd like to just say I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. But of course, that doesn't really encapsulate everything that I think. It doesn't encapsulate everything that I believe in. While I do tend to lean on the liberal side, there are some things that I am clearly not on their team, namely gun control. As you can tell, this past few years has seen an incredible increase in news coverage relating to mass murders or whatever sort of craziness is taking hold at that particular time. And it's given everyone the impression that living in America now is tantamount to living in the Wild West. This is ridiculous. It obviously is not nearly as bad as the media makes everything out to be. Clearly, there are some serious issues with gun control that, in my mind, are not being addressed at this time. As you may or may not know, if you've tried to buy a gun in the past, there are already a fair amount of hurdles that must be overcome to actually buy any type of firearm. You clearly can't go to your local store and just buy whatever you want. You have to provide identification. You have to pass a background check. And after everything goes well, you get your gun after a certain amount of time. I know in the past the amount of time was a few days. It may have actually been around a week. This isn't the case anymore. As far as I know, if you decide to go buy a firearm, you can more than likely get it within a day's time. So you may wonder, is that good enough? Is waiting one day going to make a difference in what some crazy person decides to do with that weapon once they've made the purchase? Honestly, I don't think it does. It realistically makes no difference. You could make a person wait for a month, 2 months. Realistically, it doesn't have any effect on their plans. Quite simply, if you have someone that's crazy, that person is going to do whatever it takes to get any sort of weapon, and they're going to carry out whatever heinous crime that they planned on regardless. So right now I listen to the news and I hear people that are on the left, the Democratic side, and constantly I'm hearing things coming from people like Michael Moore, a man that I respect greatly. I'm just a tremendous fan of most of his movies. But in this one regard, in this area, I can't support his goals. The situation is one where Michael has made the decision that all guns should be out of the hands of all people. Of course, this completely disregards the Constitution of the United States, which guarantees its citizens the right to bear arms. You have to understand, the reason our forefathers put this clause into a document that guarantees us our rights is so that in the face of evil, we have a legitimate way of defending ourselves. You have to understand, while America does have crime, the crime isn't the highest crime rate in the world. That may be something that the media seems to promote, but in reality, our crime rate is fairly low. The issue is simply put a case where you have a few actual events that for whatever reason seem to garner a tremendous amount of coverage. Once something hits a certain point, you have Michael Moore basically jump in and use it as a promotional tool for his agenda, which is clearly to take all guns away from all Americans. I think this is an exercise in futility because, like I said, our Constitution guarantees people the right to bear arms. Now, at the same time, I look at the situation from the right. You have people in the NRA, hunters, or, the average Joe, who have basically taken the stance, I don't care what you think they say. This is my right, and I'm going to do whatever I feel is necessary to defend myself. I'm going to do whatever I feel is necessary to, protect my family in a place where crime is possible anywhere. You have to understand, crime doesn't just happen in areas that have been hit by tremendous poverty. Crime happens anywhere. That means if you're a property owner in an extremely wealthy area, you may be just as likely to encounter a violent robbery as someone living in a slum. The reason for this is simple. People living in affluent areas have better stuff to steal. So, what are these people supposed to do when something happens where they aren't able to rely on the police to defend them? Is Michael Moore's idea one where we live in a country where the average person basically is a victim that in no way, shape, or form is going to be able to stand up to a criminal? Because obviously, no matter how many rules and regulations you may or may not put on gun ownership, you're never really going to affect the criminal who decides that they want to have a gun of their own. As you clearly know by now, guns are everywhere. It's a fact of life that criminal groups have large amounts of weapons and they sell them every day on the black market. So what effect does it make on that person if you decide, okay, we're going to pass a law that makes it near impossible for any American citizen to buy any type of weapon. Does that leave that person in a situation where they are safer because they have less to fear as far as how many individuals may or may not have a gun? I don't think so. Honestly, it's a bit ridiculous to have that mindset because criminals don't really follow the law. If the law is simply put to not allow anyone to own a weapon, the people that are going to not have the weapons are the law-abiding citizens. On the other hand, the criminals, they're going to do whatever they want. So has that had an impact on the crime rate? Probably not. There's been some evidence that in the countries that have decided to take away gun ownership from their citizens, the crime rate actually increases, at least armed crime rate statistics. So, if taking guns away from an individual doesn't make our lives any safer, what is the point in disarming the people? It seems like a game that the two sides of our government have decided to undertake to see who can waste the most time and basically make us look like fools. Another example of this situation is what's going on right now with the government shutdown. As most Americans probably don't realize, or maybe they do, I'm not really certain depending on what I see on the news, but in the public eye throughout the world, at this moment, America looks like a complete buffoon. We have the Republican side that is so blinded by some sort of irrational hatred for our President Barack Obama that they've decided that it's well worth their time and effort to absolutely tank our country, not only in its image, but potentially in our economy, when everyone knows that the average American hasn't even managed to gain their footing again after this never-ending recession. What are they doing? I mean, look, let's be realistic here. Everyone knows that the Affordable Care Act is law. Everyone on the right has gone out of their way now to attack the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. And I've heard some politicians that are so freaking stupid that they have likened this Affordable Care Act to being similar to what the Nazis did in World War II to the Jewish people. How has this not literally blown up in their face already? I mean, first, it's the most disrespectful thing I could ever imagine. Anyone that's Jewish by now should be raising their little flag and say, hey, these people are insane. How can you really say that trying to provide affordable health care to your citizens can be likened to genocide? This is so stupid that realistically I thought the situation would resolve itself within, a day or two. But here we are, somewhere around the fifth day of a shutdown government, and apparently there has not been a single change in course by any Republicans at all. Now, I understand that I could have just said, well, by neither side, but realistically, there is no possible change of course for the Democrats or our president at this point, because what the Republicans are trying to do is to derail something that is already law. They're saying we as Republicans have already compromised by simply asking to defund the Affordable Care Act. Wow. Can you imagine? I mean, you could literally be an extraordinarily ignorant person, and you would still be able to understand that what they're requesting is to destroy their crowning achievement. They somehow believe in their minds that the Democrats and our president are going to somehow be willing to tell the American public, we're sorry we were going to offer you affordable health care. We understand that there are millions of you out there who currently go with no health care whatsoever. I'm one of those. We apologize that you were this close to finally catching up to the majority of the developed countries in the world, but we somehow had to take a step back and allow a party that right now has been hijacked by a minority of sociopathic, ignorant garbage. There realistically isn't a better word for what this group of people, they call themselves the Tea Party. What a freaking joke. These people somehow believe that they are the most patriotic people, that they've decided to try to liken themselves to the Boston Tea Party, where the people decided that it was not right to be taxed without being able to have any voice in their policies. It was taxation without representation. So these people, they've basically come out saying that we feel as though the government is out of control. We live in a world with far too many rules and regulations. We need to scale back government. I'm sorry, but I laugh at this because when they say they're trying to get smaller government, what they're basically saying is that we as industrial billionaires no longer want the government to have any control over our actions. We don't want things like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to be able to fine us whenever we create some natural disaster, kind of like the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, which is just a few miles away from my door. They no longer want to be held accountable when their mega farms throw enough pollution out that rivers and streams in the area become so toxic that fish are no longer able to live and grow in them. They don't want things like the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, to be able to dictate what type of hazardous chemicals may or may not be added to our food. And they especially don't want anyone telling them what type of GMO, genetically modified organisms, are legally able to be sold on the open market. They've literally taken the perspective that what would be better for the common man in America would be for no regulation whatsoever, so that they can pollute the entire planet. They can say we're as competitive as any other country in the world. Namely, they're trying to say that they could somehow be on equal footing with China or perhaps even India, when they know this is impossible. The type of cheap labor that you can find in these foreign countries like China and India is so far below anything you'll find in America that regardless of how many regulations are taken out, realistically, they're not going to be able to compete on an equal level. It's simply not possible. What, in effect, they're trying to say is we want less regulation because we're not currently satisfied making hundreds of billions of dollars per year. We want to try to increase that so that their own paychecks are even larger. Now, you have to understand, these are people that already make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars every year. But what they want is to be safe and sound, knowing that they can dump whatever pollution they have without any reprimand. The ringleaders of this joke are the Koch brothers. By now, if you're not aware of the Koch brothers, you really need to look this up. The last name is spelled C-O-C-H, or is it K-O-C-H? It looks like Koch, but it's pronounced Koch. This group of brothers here, they did some investigating. Obviously, they went to some PR firms, and they found a couple of catchphrases that would make their little grass party movement look like some kind of meeting of the minds between the common man to try to rein in this exorbitantly large government that we have here in America. They did it in a way that preyed on people's own greed to get them to rally behind their cause. They constantly preach that what would be better for the common man would be a smaller government so that they can pay less in taxes. Why has America fallen so far that currently we pay some of the lowest taxes in the free world? I mean, our taxes are nowhere near what you would find in Europe. Nowhere near the type of taxes you find there. But their message is constantly being pounded into people's heads that we are overtaxed. You might not know this, but in the past, America's people were taxed far greater than what they are at this current time. I know in the 40s and 50s, the tax rate was so high for the rich man that it was a very rare occurrence to have someone become a millionaire. And to actually become a billionaire was damn near impossible. It just wasn't going to happen. It would take a tremendous effort to gather that type of wealth. But now with this message that America is being overtaxed to death. They've managed to gather genuine Americans, not just those that were intentionally seeded into the crowd to give this grassroots look to the entire scheme. And these people are unwittingly going out of their way to try to dismantle America. You see, I want to say, in the past, this country was capable of greatness. After World War II, we could have literally decided, hey, we had to go to a war that we really did not want to take any part in, and we could have just won and walked away to let the rest of the world heal in whichever way they managed. But instead, we decided what was best for everyone was if we would go into these countries, namely Japan and Germany, that cause so much pain and suffering and death. And instead of ignoring them and letting them just suffer, we actually went in and rebuilt these countries so that their economies would heal. This eventually would benefit the entire world. You can imagine the kind of money necessary to do this when we had already been in a situation where we had to spend billions of dollars financing this world war, building tanks, ships, guns, paying for soldiers, paying for their clothing, paying for their weapons, paying their families when they lost their lives. But the country was able to do that because everyone in this country was patriotic enough to pay into the system, which kept America prosperous. You see, at that time, whenever needed, America was able to begin these gigantic building tasks, like look at the Hoover Dam, look at the Golden Gate Bridge. This type of building is rarely seen today. I mean, we as a country really no longer have any iconic landmarks that we ourselves have created. A majority of the achievements that we've had were actually created in that time frame where people paid higher taxes to support our government so that our government could support us in return. Instead, though, now we live in a world where ever since Ronald Reagan, taxes have been incessantly cut for the wealthy, to where we find ourselves in a position to where the biggest corporations in the world pay absolutely no taxes whatsoever. In a gigantic twist, not only do those companies not pay taxes, they actually receive American money in the form of incentives, tax incentives, We actually pay them, we reward them for not sending American jobs overseas. Now, I understand that when Mr. Obama says these things that, it makes the average person think that, it's great that we're willing to invest in this type of business. But realistically, this business has an obligation to its country. Why does a company that has record profits in the billions of dollars, why does that company no longer pay any in taxes? This is a joke. right now, the situation is that the Republicans are going crazy saying that this Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is going to bankrupt our country. If they were so concerned about bankrupting the country, maybe those millionaires would actually pay their fair share in taxes instead of hiding the majority of their wealth offshore in these tax haven islands where they never have to disclose their incomes to Americans. Why don't these people actually act patriotic for once and actually pay their fair share instead of constantly whining and complaining that America is a burden that they just simply cannot carry? But in the next breath, claim that providing health care for Americans who aren't fortunate enough to be millionaires, that something like that could bankrupt the country. Do you see the hypocrisy that I'm talking about? These people have taken the ideas of Ayn Rand and have gone completely nuts with that idea. They read Atlas Shrugged, and they made a decision that this concept where the rich should just forget about the poor is a joke. I understand there are benefits to that system because honestly they benefit. They don't have to help anyone. But these people are about the most unpatriotic people that I can actually imagine. Because in the past, when I was growing up, I'm only 37. When I was growing up, I saw movies, I saw television shows explaining how every man kicked in their fair share. This simply doesn't happen anymore. And while I do understand that this isn't a problem in that respect that only Republicans suffer from, there are millionaires that are Democrats as well. What I don't understand is why the Republicans can rally behind something that's clearly intended to help the average man or the person who doesn't have the available funds to get their own health care, when there are so many other issues that are just broken, like them avoiding their taxes. I can't understand how they can take that stance and look at themselves in a mirror without feeling a little sick. Obviously, something is wrong with our country at this moment. And I think what's wrong is people that are completely and utterly devoid of compassion, people that have no concept of what it's like to try to live on a few dollars an hour because they make millions of dollars in a few weeks. These people have the attitude that if you can't do what I've done, you simply don't deserve to live. Doesn't anyone see this the way I do? Is this somehow a secret? The world is watching us right now. Some of those people are laughing. They're saying, wow, look at these Americans. They are so out of reality that their government is on a vacation because our president wants to help the poor. This is a country that constantly sends aid to third world countries every day. We fund Egyptian military. we send immeasurable amounts of money and other forms of assistance to Israel. Anytime a natural disaster happens anywhere, we're first in line trying to fix it. But somehow, when there's a disaster here in our own home country, no one wants to help. At least one party simply refuses to try to help. They're going to do everything they can to ensure that this law never takes effect, but it already has. They're simply grandstanding and making us all look like fools. I think it's time during our next election that we let the Tea Party Corporation and their Republican puppets, as well as any Democrats who've decided to fight the Affordable Care Act, we should make sure that during our next election, these people understand the error of their ways. Because if we let those people continue to run our country, you can believe that within the next 20 years, America isn't going to be the home of anything. We're going to be begging for help. That saddens me because I remember what this country used to be when I was a little boy. Please, get the message out. Let people know what's going on. Try to explain it to your family. I know there are a lot of people out there that get their news from Fox. And the things they're being told every day are, quite simply, they're just lies. It's not anything more than a biased lie. If you get this message, please do your best to go out there and explain to your friends and family what is going on, what's at stake, and maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to stop the madness, begin to correct the mistakes, and put America on top again so that the rest of the world can see that while we may have stumbled, we're also awesome at getting back on our feet. Alright, I'm going to stop there for now. This is John Garza, aka GameWiz1 for GWiz TV. If you'd like, leave a message down below. I'd love to hear your ideas, your thoughts on this video. And please remember, if you will, hit the subscribe button. Let YouTube know that you appreciate this channel. Let them know that you're interested in our content. Because at some point, if we get no help, this may no longer be possible. Alright everyone, thanks. Later.